Donald Trump appears to have turned off Fox News, literally, and also turned on Fox News figuratively, turned against them, so to speak, at least weekend Fox News. And he has unleashed exactly the type of unhinged Twitter storm that we've become pretty used to, actually, as something that the president does over the last couple of years. Remember, I told you before, there's nothing immutable or set in stone about Fox News and Donald Trump being aligned. Yes, right now, Trump mostly is watching Fox News. Trump mostly says that Fox News is doing the right type of reporting. Fox gives Trump a lot of ideas that then Trump sees on Fox and Friends in the morning and then tweets about all day or talks about for a few days. On the other hand, yes, mostly Fox News supports Donald Trump. Sometimes Shepard Smith or Chris Wallace will say some basic, uncontroversial truth, fundamental real world critique of Donald Trump. And the Fox News audience will be angry with them, even though in most of the world, what Fox and what Shep and Chris Wallace say is just the truth. But remember that early in the 2016 Republican primary, Fox News and Donald Trump were not actually aligned, and they only later sort of joined forces. Anyway, Trump is furious. Check out this series of tweets. And as usual, imagine Barack Obama sitting around tweeting stuff like this. It's hard to imagine because it would never have happened, because this is unlike anything we've ever seen before in the Oval Office. Trump tweeting, quote, "Watching Fox News weekend anchors is worse than watching low ratings fake news CNN or Lion Brian Williams." Remember when he totally fabricated a war story, trying to make himself into a hero and got fired? A very dishonest journalist. And the crew of degenerate Comcast, NBC, MSNBC Trump haters who do whatever Brian and Steve tell them to do. Like CNN, NBC is also way down in the ratings, but Fox News, who failed in getting the very boring Dem debates, is now loading up with Democrats and even using fake, unsourced New York Times as a source of information. Ask the Times what they paid for the Boston Globe and what they sold it for, lost $1.5 billion, or their old headquarters building disaster, or their unfunded liability. Fox News is changing fast, but they forgot the people who got them there. This thing about they forgot the people who got them there, Trump seems to have the relationship backwards. They got Trump there by jumping on his side about halfway through the 2016 campaign when they saw that he actually seemed to be appealing to a shockingly high portion of the Republican electorate. And they kind of were together in getting Trump to where he is today. Now, all of this happened. Why? It's not really clear. We don't know. It appears that it might be because Fox News broadcast the following video of people in France watching the Women's World Cup final. And when Fox News goes live, the crowd knows it's Fox News and they start chanting F Trump. Take a look at this video.
History has just been made, Arthel. We are here in a sports bar in Lyon, France. Here, listen to it. Said we are in a sports bar. We were going to be outside. We were going to be looking at a screen with the football.
Just the funniest part about this is that if this really is why Trump lost it on Fox News, it's not really Fox's fault. I mean, Fox is doing live TV. This is what people started chanting, presumably unbeknownst to the anchor as he went live. But if this makes Trump angry with Fox, great, because any disruption to Fox being a total arm of the Trump administration status quo is great. And Trump continuing his bizarre attack on Fox later on saying, quote, "Impossible to believe that Fox News has hired Donna Brazil, the person fired by CNN, after they tried to hide the bad facts and failed, for giving crooked Hillary Clinton the questions to a debate, something unimaginable. Now she is all over Fox, including Shep Smith, by far their lowest rated show. Watch the Fox News weekend daytime anchors who are terrible go after her big time. That's what they want, but it sure is not what the audience wants." I don't really know that a super deep analysis is even required here. I mean, Trump is triggered because he expects Fox News to be pro-Trump echo chambers 24/7. Occasionally, sometimes even by accident, in the case of that video from the World Cup Paris F Trump chant, something will occasionally pierce the echo chamber, and Donald Trump gets mad. This guy's a very sensitive snowflake. He constantly attacks others as weak. Soldiers who have PTSD are not strong enough, even though Trump's dad paid a doctor to write a letter about how Trump's ankles preclude him from going to Vietnam. Totally emasculated is Trump by the mere mention of John McCain. So he makes it his job to attack McCain endlessly. And the most important implication is that if the relationship between Trump and Fox News breaks as the 2020 election gets closer, that's a really good opportunity for something other than Fox News to be preventing, to get into the action, and maybe we can get Trump removed from office, in the sense that anything that disrupts this kind of hand-in-glove relationship between Trump and Fox News is great. And we should make sure to publicize any time that there is this apparent rift. When Fox News criticizes Trump, it should be widely publicized. We know Trump will hear about it. We know it will trigger him. We know it will send him into another Twitter frenzy. And anything we can do to sever that relationship is potentially going to pay dividends in the 2020 election. Now, just as a word of warning, remember, if Trump moves on from Fox as his favorite, he is probably going to move on to promoting an even crazier channel called, I don't remember if it's OAN or OANN. I think it's like One America News or the One America News Network. I forget exactly. It's even more off the deep end than Fox News, if you can imagine it. And check it out online if you want, although you may not be thrilled about giving them any of your web traffic and potentially ad revenue. But if Trump does sever the tie with Fox, he's probably going to OAN, and they're even wackier. And OAN rising in terms of prominence in the United States would be materially destructive to everything we hold near and dear in terms of the fabric of this country. So there's ups and downs. I don't know. What do you think is going on with the Trump-Fox relationship? Let me know. I've told you before that the word socialist for the American right has become just like a meaningless catch-all insult that doesn't actually have anything to do with what socialism is as a form of government, as a form of an economy. Socialism is, in its simplest form, a system where ownership of the means of production is socialized. There are different versions of it. We can debate whether we should be for or against it, but socialism is socialism. It's not other stuff that you don't like. Emma Vigeland from TYT, I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, interviewed a Trump supporter. And this Trump supporter may be the dumbest Trump supporter I have ever seen interviewed, period. And that takes a lot. I mean, it takes a lot to even potentially get to that level. The woman that Emma interviews says that Joe Biden is a socialist. Now, of course, if you look at the Democratic field, you would realize that Joe Biden would be likely the furthest from the socialist of those candidates currently running in the Democratic primary. Emma asks basic follow-up questions like, what do you mean Joe Biden's a socialist? And then it gets really good. If you're listening and not watching, just bear in mind that the woman is wearing, obviously, a red MAGA hat during the interview.
Do you think Joe Biden is a socialist?
Yes.
How would you define socialism?
I define socialism when you bring down your own country, your own race, because he's not black. And
What does that mean? Bringing him down to black people? Is that what you're saying?
no, he's saying that the white people, he doesn't look at himself in the mirror.
Okay, so it's already insane. He's a socialist because he's bringing down his own country and race, and he's not black. What? Like, what does that even mean? I'm not even understanding the language that's being used, never mind the underlying sentiment that this woman is trying to communicate. Let's continue. She tries another definition, and Emma is actually so perplexed by the stupidity of this person. She's visibly struggling to even unpack this and ask follow-up questions because you can't unpack complete and utter nonsense.
So
That's what I look at. Hey, you talk about the white people, and look at you.
well, he actually,
You know I don't like him? I'll tell you exactly why I don't like him. He's got a big ego. He thinks he's better than God.
Trump said he could shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue and get away with it.
No, I don't think so.
He did say that.
No, he didn't. No,
It's on tape.
no, I don't believe it. No, that's fake.
I swear to God, you can watch him.
Fake news, fake news.
Okay, this part is actually really scary. Trump obviously did say that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose support. This is how the minds of these people work. They hear something that they don't like. They just deny it exists. And this is why you can't reason with these people. And I'm going to say more about that later.
Fake news. Fake news.
Okay, do you want to watch the video?
They say, I have the most loyal people. Did you ever see that? Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
Any of the Democrats, do any of them appeal to you?
Liars. All liars. The Pinocchio keeps growing.
Okay.
And then you yourself won't have a country. You yourself won't have a country. Keep believing all these liars, and you yourself will be out of your country. Socialism doesn't work wherever it goes.
But why is Joe Biden a socialist?
Why is Joe Biden a socialist? Because it's all about the money. I mean,
But socialism is about.
the thing is that Joe Biden is all about the money. It's all about the power, the money. That's why.
Trump's a billionaire.
Yes, and so is Joe Biden.
No.
Yes, 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 yes.
Trump went bankrupt 4 times.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. And that's business.
But he did.
How many people? Okay, you go bankrupt. How many people don't start all over again after a bankruptcy?
So this is severe idiocy. That's all. I mean, this is not a person who's simply mentally ill, right? That's not what we're talking about here. Sure, there may be some personality disorders going on there. Who knows? But this is someone who's simply severely brainwashed. Biden is a socialist because he's all about the money, and Biden is a billionaire. Biden is, of course, not a billionaire. And if he were a billionaire in a country where most people can't even meet a $400 expense that's unexpected, he probably would not be a socialist. And the most important takeaway I want you to glean from this is that we can't convince these people that Trump is toxic, that he's bad for the country, that he's bad for the world, and not to vote for him. You can't convince these people because they reason backwards. Facts have no effect on them. They come up with an idea like Biden's a socialist, and they will attribute to that anything. Biden's a socialist because of something about his race. Biden's a socialist because he's all about the money. Biden's a socialist because he's a billionaire. So when I say don't worry about them, I don't mean don't worry about the fact that people like this are what got Trump elected and have done so much damage to this country. What I mean is let's just get left-wingers to vote. It's a much better campaign strategy, and this is an example of why. How long would it take you to convince this woman to vote for someone other than Trump? Would it take 5 hours? Would it take 10 hours? If we got like the most influential and effectively convincing progressive minds in a room with this woman, would it take 100 hours to convince her to vote for someone other than Trump? How many people who already dislike Trump, but are sort of on the fence about whether they want to vote at all, could we simply talk to and say, listen, here's why you should vote. Let's get you registered. Here's why voting is important. I believe that in the time it would take to convince this one woman to vote for someone other than Trump, if it were even possible, we could be convincing dozens or hundreds of people to vote for someone other than Trump who already are sensitive to the anti-Trump ideology. So as I've said before, I do a show, right? I believe in dialogue. Emma works for TYT. It makes sense for her to talk to this woman. I take phone calls from Trumpists and from right-wingers. But I'm doing a show, right, as a campaign strategy, as a get out the vote strategy, as a strategy to defeat Donald Trump in 2020. Don't waste your time with these people because there is no sense in it. You cannot convince them, or if you could, the amount of time it would take would not make any sense to actually spend, okay? They're a lost cause for the purposes of winning elections the way we want to win them. Let me know what you think. I'm on Twitter at @DPakman. The show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button down below. If you love learning new things, you probably want to check this out. The David Pakman Show today is sponsored by Skillshare, and we're giving you 2 entire months of free access to Skillshare when you click the link underneath this video. Skillshare is a vibrant online learning community offering more than 25,000 video classes on just about anything you can think of. Get better at playing an instrument. Learn to use Photoshop, how to edit videos. They have classes on drawing, painting, business, cooking, nutrition, personal productivity, and I'm not even really scratching the surface. I recently took a great class on introductory watercolor painting. I'm still not good, but I am learning, and you can access the entire library of fun, easy to use online courses for free for 2 months by using the link underneath this video. 2 months of learning something that's totally new to you, something you want to get better at, something you already love, or you can get ahead in your career by learning new skills that will help you at your job. I've gotten a ton out of it. Pat has taken some courses that he's found really valuable, and I think you'll love it too. Get started for free by clicking the link under this video. Okay, I regularly receive videos of interactions with police from people in the audience. Usually, I don't end up talking about them on the show because I don't see anything interesting or the circumstances seem very blurry. I don't, blurry or gray area, maybe not literally blurry video, but just it's unclear exactly what's going on. There's nothing interesting. I don't think there's any interesting points to be made. But in the past, there have been some times that we successfully put a spotlight on interactions between police and citizens. And one example is back in 2015. I received a video from Ohio of a black man being pulled over for, quote, making direct eye contact with a police officer. That clip ended up getting nearly 300,000 YouTube views. But more importantly, it actually led to a meeting between the black man and the white officer, and I believe an apology and maybe even further training for officers. It was a really great thing that was able to come of it. I have another video for you today and another one of these stories that I do want to talk about. And this one is from Fairfax County, Virginia. And it involves a young black man back in March. The video was only recently made available, sitting in his car at a red light, driving home from work. And before I tell you the story, make sure that you subscribe, like, and share this video if you're watching it on YouTube. We want this to be widely seen. That's how it will have the widest impact. So subscribe, like the video, and share it. As the story has been told to me, an Officer Bush, badge number 4077, started following the young black man, made eye contact as the officer passed the black man. The officer then makes a U-turn in the middle of the street to get right behind this young man and follows the man into his neighborhood and all the way to his apartment building, in fact, at which point the driver parks and the officer approaches the man and starts asking questions that don't seem quite right given the circumstances, including claiming not to believe that the young black man actually lives in the apartment complex into which they've pulled, despite the fact that, as I've been told the story, there is actually a resident parking sticker on the driver's side of the vehicle driven by the young black man that associates it with the apartment complex into which they pulled. So we have video, and I want to show you the video, and there's a lot of concerning things here. Let's look at clip number 1.
Hey. Hey, sir. How you doing?
Doing well, how are you?
Hey, good. Hey, do you live here?
I do, yes.
Okay. Where do you live at?
In this apartment right here.
Oh, okay. You got ID on you?
No, I don't.
You don't have ID?
Well, I do have an ID, but do I have to show it to you?
You don't have ID on you?
I do have an ID.
Okay.
Do I have to show it to you?
You don't have to. Is this your car?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Is there a problem?
What building do you live in?
This building right here.
What's the address?
I don't have to show you. I don't have to tell you the address.
What's that?
Do I need to tell you the address?
Yeah, what's the address?
Why do I need to tell you my address?
No, I'm asking you what the address is.
But why do I need to tell you that?
Because I'm asking you.
But is there a reason why you're asking me?
Because I want to know if you live here, because if you don't live here...
I just told you I do live here.
Right, but if you don't know the address, it doesn't
But
look like to me like you live here.
So notice that there's a series of questions, none of which seem to have any relation to reasonable suspicion of a crime having been committed. The driver knows his rights and is asserting them. And then it gets to the crux of what the officer said there. It doesn't look like, to me, that you live here. You don't look like you live here. What would be the reason for that? What about this man who knows his rights and has done nothing to warrant suspicion of a crime? What about his appearance suggests to the officer that he doesn't really live in the apartment complex in which he claims to live? Now, I know that there will be people who will say, David, the driver is being obstinate. Just give your ID, state the address, and you'll be on your way. And this is exactly the problem. This is called phishing. The officer asserts no reason why he's following and now asking repeated questions to this individual. The driver realizes that the officer is phishing, and he doesn't provide more information. And your reaction is that the driver is the problem here? By the way, again, the driver reportedly has a parking sticker for that parking complex, that apartment complex, in a window on the driver's side. But again, he doesn't have to engage with this stuff if he doesn't want to. So let's continue where he goes back to the car, questions about the car and questions about how long the individual has lived in the area.
Okay,
And why
I'll
is
be
that?
honest with you.
Why is that?
Whose vehicle is this?
This is my vehicle.
Is it in your name?
It's in my mom's name. It's in my name also.
Okay, how long have you lived in this area?
Do I have to tell you that?
I'm just asking you a question.
Okay, but why are you asking me these questions?
Do you live here or not, sir?
I already told you, I do live here.
Okay, because if you don't live here, you're trespassing.
I know that, and I told you, I live here.
Okay. So what's the address that you live at?
Why do I have to tell you that?
Because I don't believe you live here, sir.
And why don't you believe me? Why don't you believe I live here?
Because you don't know the address.
I already told you, I do know the address.
Okay, what's the address that you live?
I don't have to tell you that. I live here. Why are you harassing me?
Okay. I'm not harassing you. Okay?
You're in my neighborhood, coming up to me, asking me what my address is because you say I don't live here. Why don't you believe I live here?
If you don't live here, then you're trespassing. Do you have reason to believe that I'm trespassing? I mean, again, other than the fact that you said I don't look like I'd live here, the driver doesn't have to do the police officer's job for him. And good for the driver for saying, you're telling me you don't believe I live here, but why are you even talking to me right now? These questions are questions meant to try to trip up or create an apparent contradiction, or even just to further make the driver nervous, as the driver understandably is, as you can hear in his voice, so that he then does something justifying further interaction with the officer, whether it's searching the car, pulling the driver out, whatever. And the driver, you hear the nervousness in his voice, but he doesn't take the bait, and I think that's good. Now, this is a good point for me to make now. This is not about messing with police, okay? This is about police messing with drivers who have done nothing wrong that police can articulate that would create suspicion of any kind that a crime may have been committed by this person. I am not one of these folks, you see these videos on YouTube, where I'm about seeking out Border Patrol checkpoints to refuse to provide ID or answer questions, to make interesting YouTube videos. I'm not about that. I think that that's generally a waste of time. I'm not into driving deliberately into sobriety checkpoints and trying to interfere with the checkpoint, whatever, right? That's not, I personally find that to be a waste of time. That's different here. That's not what's going on. This is an individual who was just driving home when this officer decided this is someone that I'm going to talk to and start asking repeated harassing questions. Often you will hear, well, the driver generally matched the description of someone we were looking for. Police will say that. That wasn't said here, and it hasn't been asserted after the fact, even though an investigation has been opened up. Let's now watch the end of the interaction.
Sir, I'm not harassing you. Okay?
Can I have your name and badge number?
You can. Detective Bush, and my badge number is 4077.
Okay. Thank you.
So do you have an ID on you or not?
I do. I already told you, I do have an ID.
Okay. What's your name?
I don't have to tell you that. Am I being detained or am I free to go?
You're free to go, sir.
Thank you. You have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
Ultimately getting to the key question, am I being detained or am I free to go? Detective Bush ultimately realizes he has no business trying to detain this person. He has no justification for detaining this individual. And the right question was ultimately asked, am I free to go? And the answer was yes. This is a guy driving around. An officer decides that absent any evidence or reason for suspicion, he's going to mess with this guy and see what he can find. He's going fishing. Let me throw my fishing line in the water and see if there's fish, because why not? Maybe I'll catch something. And it gets worse because the officer stayed at the apartment complex just watching this guy for a while, half hour. One additional video, just 8 seconds to show you. And there's the officer continuing to wait around in the parking lot. I don't know more about this right now, okay? You now have all the information that I have. I was sent this. I watched all of these videos multiple times in detail. Let's see what comes of this. I'm told that Internal Affairs is now investigating this. Knowing and asserting your rights when you were being confronted by police for no reason is not being obstinate. And this guy did the right thing. A lot of people don't know what their rights are in these situations. Despite being clearly nervous, you hear the agitation in the black man's voice. And I understand it. He asserted his rights. He remained calm. And it doesn't always go this way. There are times when merely asserting your rights in the way that this individual did can actually get you pulled out of the car and can get the vehicle searched. And there is a risk associated with this approach. We'll see what comes of it. This is a police department that whose demographics are drastically out of line with the demographics of the community which they police. And this is an issue that's a much broader issue in the United States that we've talked about before. Pete Buttigieg actually brought this up at the recent Democratic presidential debate. So let me know what you think about this. As soon as I have more information, I will give it to you, because this is all I have so far. Please remember to subscribe, like, and share this video. We do want as many people to see it as possible. We'll take a quick break. Make sure you're following the show on Instagram at David Pakman Show. Follow me on Instagram at david.pakman as well. So this is very interesting. I want to take a little bit of a break from serious politics for a second. And not that the alleged rape by Donald Trump of a 13-year-old along with Jeffrey Epstein is not serious, but I want to just take a step back and show you just an example of Donald Trump being the totally triggered snowflake that we know him to be at one of his own rallies. So as you know, just to very quickly sort of reset, Jeffrey Epstein has now been arrested on really serious child sex trafficking charges. As you also may know, there are longstanding allegations against Donald Trump and Epstein for raping the same 13-year-old girl at Epstein's Manhattan, New York City condo years ago. Trump recently did one of his MAGA rallies in Duluth, Minnesota. There was a protester in the crowd holding up a picture of Donald Trump with Jeffrey Epstein, because again, they used to be friends, they used to hang out. Now, I would put the picture on the screen for you. It's a very well-known picture, but the picture's copyright is held by Getty Images, which is one of the most aggressive, bogus copyright claimants around. So I'm not going to do that, but you can easily find the picture online. If you do a Google image search for Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein. Trump is on the right in the picture. Epstein, to Epstein's left, that would be, with his arm around Jeffrey Epstein. So at Trump's Duluth, Minnesota rally, this is just great. A protester, or an audience member, I guess you could call them, had a blown up version of this picture. And you can see as Donald Trump is talking, he notices it and he does kind of a double take. And then he clearly recognizes it. And that's already kind of interesting, because it means very clearly the Epstein stuff is on Trump's mind, that Trump from this far away would instantly recognize what the picture is of. And Trump immediately starts calling for the guy holding the picture to be removed. He interrupts his own speech. And brilliantly, the Fox News feed actually showed the guy holding the blown up picture and the content of the picture itself. I was actually thinking maybe this is what Trump saw over the weekend on Fox that angered him so much that he went on that crazy anti-Fox News Twitter storm over the weekend. In any case, check out our president, more than 70 years old, triggered so strongly by a picture of him with one of his friends that he interrupts his own speech and calls even more attention to the guy. And then obviously the 70-plus-year-old billionaire president starts insulting the guy holding the picture, with red meat for the Trumpist audience joking about the gender identity of the guy because, oh my goodness, it's a guy with long hair, which obviously is what we would make fun of. Let's take a look at the video.
You have to mark up thousands of miles coming through Mexico. You come up thousands of miles coming through Mexico, and we're going to stop it. Get him out of here. Get him out of here. Go home to your mom, darling. Go home. Get him out of here. Out. Was that a man or a woman? Because he needs a haircut more than I do. Couldn't tell.
The chants of USA, USA are almost fitting in a sense. USA, USA, where our president is accused of rape and sexual assault 15 times, still becomes president, and then kicks out of his speeches anybody who calls attention to his friendly relationships with his co-alleged perpetrator, I guess we would call them. The crowd chants USA as a protester is ejected for holding up a picture of Trump with a man he allegedly conspired with to rape a 13-year-old. We don't have to read dystopian science fiction of hundreds of years from now or 50 years from now. I mean, this is the dystopia. Understand, this is how Trump takes back control with gender identity jokes. Trump is accused of raping a 13-year-old with his friend Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein gets arrested. The allegations are horrible. Someone in the audience has a picture of Trump with Epstein, and Trump gets the crowd back on his side. Instead of being concerned about the allegations, the crowd is riotous over Trump making fun of whether it's a boy or a girl because, hey, they have long hair and long hair is for girls, and the crowd goes absolutely bonkers. How funny, right? A boy with long hair. It's like he's a girl in some way. The president of the United States making fun of men for having long hair, which is extra strange, by the way, considering Donald Trump looks just like his own mother. And that's not, I mean, it's not a joke. Trump looks just like his own mother. I'm not sure if you've seen pictures, but who cares? This is what the guy in the glass house is choosing to throw stones about. He's accused of raping a child, and someone holds up a picture, and this is how the president behaves. The world is laughing. The world is laughing, and it is going to take years, if not a decade, once Trump finally is gone, to rebuild the relationships that he has embarrassingly destroyed. Make sure you're following me on Instagram at david.pakman, where you can ask me questions about this or any other stories from today's show. Follow the show on Instagram as well, at David Pakman Show. So the clowns over at Fox News are just absolutely thrilled that we live in a country where people are free to work multiple jobs because one job doesn't give them a stable a standard of living. There's this concept called freedom from versus freedom to that exists in political philosophy, and it relates to positive and negative freedoms, okay? So positive liberty is the freedom to do something, and negative liberty is the freedom from being stopped by other people from doing something. So the point is there's different types of liberty, and sometimes the freedom to do something is actually only relevant because there's a lack of freedom somewhere else. So here's an example. If I say, it's great to have the freedom in the United States to work for whichever company gives you the best health insurance, a counterpoint would be, hold on a second. It's terrible to lack the freedom in the United States to be able to just work whatever job is the most rewarding job without being constrained by worrying about losing your health insurance. That's the way I would see it, okay? This gets us to Fox News. Now, if I said to you, if you look at the numbers of people in the United States who are working multiple jobs, is that a form of freedom to work as many jobs as you want? Or is that actually a reflection of the lack of freedom that stagnant wages and a lack of living wages place on people and force them into having to work multiple jobs? I consider the working multiple jobs thing an indicator of the lack of freedom that too many workers in the United States experience, which gets us to the Fox News perspective on this issue, where absolute and total farcical clowns, Pete Hegseth and Ainsley Earhardt, are just gushing. They're literally thanking God about how wonderful it is that we live in a country where people can work multiple jobs. And it's mind-blowing that this is actually an analysis that resonates with millions of people in this country. Take a look.
You know what Kamala Harris says is so disingenuous. For most of my life, I've worked 2 or 3 or 4 types of jobs, of sources of income. Right. Today, you can do that more flexibly. How many people do you know who do something and then maybe in their free time they drive an Uber or they do something else to bring in extra cash? Thank God we live in the kind of country where we have the innovation and flexibility, where you can bring in money from different places and do different things.
When I'm in an Uber and you talk to them, you get to know them. Many of them do say they're doing this to make a little extra money, and then we start talking. Well, how much extra, do you mind if I ask, do you make a week? And it's enough to pay for their kids to take an extra swim class, this one guy told me, or it's enough to put a little bit of money aside for their kids to go to college. I love those types of people. My dad worked several jobs. If he had the opportunity to make a little extra, he would.
These people are truly sick. I mean, it's not inspiring that so many people have to work second jobs and third jobs. it would be inspiring to live in a country where people didn't have to do that, right? This is like those supposedly heartwarming, inspirational stories about how great Americans are because when little Jimmy needed a prosthetic leg because of a medical condition, Jimmy's classmates and teachers came together to fundraise and do bake sales to raise money. What a great country. No. It's disgusting that one of the richest countries in the world makes the reality one where Jimmy couldn't just get the prosthetic leg and needed money from his classmates and from teachers and from the parents of classmates buying muffins at a bake sale. It's backwards, okay? And I actually want to go further. This multiple job status quo that's so common actually reinforces the system we have. I've talked about this in my segments about types of activism that go beyond just signing a petition or calling your elected official. I've said before, corporations have huge disproportionate control over our systems, the legal system, the judicial system, media, everything. They maintain control in part by making sure that there's a system in which the average person doesn't go protest, doesn't demand change, doesn't participate in strategic defaults or mass rallies in urban centers. And one of the best ways to make sure people don't do that people don't protest and people don't demand change, is if they can't even miss a day of work, because that would be 2 or 3 jobs that they might get fired from, or they can't miss a day of work because they can't buy food if they miss that day of work. That's a really great way to make sure people don't show up and actually protest and demand real change. And if you're in a situation where you even need multiple jobs, then you are very unlikely to have the wherewithal and resources to go and protest and demand changes to the system that caused you to need 2 or 3 jobs in the first place. This is a self-reinforcing feedback loop. And I mean, listen, I don't know the Fox News hosts who said it's just so inspiring to live in a country. Thank God we live in a country where people can work 10 jobs if that's what they want to do. They may be useful idiots. They may be actual cogs in the wheel, deliberately reinforcing the system. It doesn't really matter, okay? The effect is that they are reinforcing the system that big corporations have already done a pretty damn good job at reinforcing. Really disturbing and disgusting stuff. You might remember or you might not, because corporate media basically hasn't covered this, which is that Donald Trump has been accused not just of sexually assaulting more than a dozen adult women, but of raping a 13-year-old girl. And I've told you before that this event allegedly took place along with one of Donald Trump's, I don't know if we call him an associate or an acquaintance or a friend, but it's a guy named Jeffrey Epstein. A woman known only as Jane Doe previously had alleged that when she was 13 years old, Donald Trump raped her at a party thrown by Jeffrey Epstein, and that Epstein himself had also raped her. Now, the woman ended up fearing for her life and dropping a civil suit against Donald Trump. But of course, the allegations themselves have not been recanted. Epstein has been sort of a slippery guy to actually charge with some of these incidents, but he has now been arrested and charged with sex trafficking dating back to the early 2000s. He is now facing charges for paying underage girls for massages and molesting them in Florida and New York homes that he owns. And before we even get to the Trump connection, because that's a whole other thing, I have to tell you that the right is spreading endless lies already about Epstein. One example is the right is saying the Robert Mueller FBI allowed Epstein to plead to lesser charges and avoid a long jail sentence. The truth is that the deal Epstein previously got for charges was from the then Miami U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta, who happens to be Trump's labor secretary now. This is now really bad. The records say Epstein brought 40 girls who were underage to his Florida mansion, and they were sold into sexual encounters of all kinds. These allegations are truly disgusting and disturbing. And then the Trump piece pops up. Trump said about Jeffrey Epstein to New York Magazine in 2002, quote, "I've known Jeff for 15 years, terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side." Not good. Not good. So back to the allegations that Donald Trump raped one of the same girls that Epstein allegedly raped when she was 13 at Epstein's Manhattan condo. I don't know if they're going to resurface here as a result of this arrest, but this is certainly not what Donald Trump would consider to be good news to have Jeffrey Epstein back in the public spotlight in this way. Now, I've looked at the content of the lawsuit that, again, was filed against Donald Trump for the rape. The charges were eventually dropped, supposedly because of death threats against the accuser. It is shocking what is in the lawsuit. I'm not going to read it to you. It's dozens of pages, but you can easily find it online, and we're going to link to it on YouTube. The accuser claimed before the lawsuit was withdrawn, just as a few highlights, that Trump threatened her to never talk about the rape or she risked being hurt or killed, which is exactly in line with the intimidatory tactics that we know Donald Trump has employed against such former mistresses as Stormy Daniels. So it's all truly sick. I mean, it really makes me sick. And much like with much of what's going on with Donald Trump, there may never be consequences. But with Epstein back in the news, we will see. And consider the number of conflicts that are involved here. Donald Trump is or was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. The old prosecutor from Miami is now Trump's labor secretary. Attorney General William Barr has recused himself from the entire Jeffrey Epstein case because his former law firm once represented Epstein. This is another reminder of the incestuous nature of power, influence, and wealth in this country. And Donald Trump knows that this is not good for him. And he actually is on tilt. Next, I want to talk about what he did at a rally to someone who held up a picture of him with Jeffrey Epstein. So it literally rained on Trump's parade over the weekend. I totally checked out of News and Politics starting like right after we finished the July 3rd show. Didn't pay attention to anything until last night when I started preparing for today's show. But I did hear from friends that it rained and it poured during Donald Trump's very absurd kind of dictator-esque military parade involving tanks and so many other things. But the real hilarity was actually in Donald Trump's speech, where he said lots of things that just made no sense whatsoever. This is just the funniest, dumbest thing, which tells us that Donald Trump is ignorant, not just on the big stuff, relationships between countries and issues of foreign policy and trade and economics and social issues and on and on and on and on. He's also ignorant just about basic human timelines, in a sense. Donald Trump, in a speech meant to, I guess, be inspiring, called the salute to America on the 4th of July, mentioned the heroic Continental Army taking over, yes, airports during the Revolutionary War for independence from England. And of course, there were no planes or airports in the 1700s, but that, I guess, doesn't really matter. Check this out, and the explanation, which I'll play for you later, is even funnier.
The Continental Army suffered a bitter winter of Valley Forge, found glory across the waters of the Delaware, and seized victory from Cornwallis of Yorktown. Our Army manned the airport. It ran the ramparts. It took over the airports. It did everything it had to do. And at Fort McHenry.
Yeah, what on earth is this guy talking about? Airports in the 1700s. I received a really funny email about this from Gordon. Gordon said, "Dear David, I'm a 325-year-old air traffic controller, and I wish to protest that nobody told me that there was a job for me at any of the multitudes of airports in the USA in the 18th century. In order to make ends meet, I was forced to drive a tank at the Battle of Yorktown, whilst my brethren flew supersonic jet fighters from the nearby nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. If I had known about these airports, I would have jumped into my Tesla to get to the ATCO recruitment office in Trump Tower. Best wishes, Gordon Bain." So the explanation from the Trump administration is that the teleprompter was faulty for a moment. Now, that's funny because that could mean two different things. Are they saying that a faulty teleprompter incorrectly added a line about Revolutionary War era airports? That would be a weird thing. Like normally when things glitch, they don't put up coherent language that points to inaccurate historical assertions. That would be a weird sort of glitch for a teleprompter. The other explanation is the teleprompter glitched in the sense that Trump had to ad-lib briefly. And what Trump ad-libbed was that there were airports in the Revolutionary War. Another really strange moment was where Trump was praising American inventors, and he mentioned the Scottish-born Canadian citizen inventor Alexander Graham Bell. Check this out.
Our quest for greatness unleashed a culture of discovery that led Thomas Edison to imagine his light bulb. Alexander Graham Bell to create the telephone, the Wright brothers to look to the sky and see the next great frontier. For Americans, nothing is impossible.
So really strange to talk about how great Americans are at inventing stuff on the 4th of July and mention Alexander Graham Bell, who of course was Scottish and moved to Canada, where he was a citizen when he invented the telephone. Again, this did not seem to be a teleprompter glitch. It actually seemed to be part of the script or Donald Trump ad-libbing himself, both of which raise a number of questions. Another embarrassment, and as a reminder, because so much of this is related to teleprompters failing, or Trump reading strange things from the teleprompter. Remember what Donald Trump thought about Barack Obama's use of a teleprompter? One example from 2012 when Donald Trump tweeted, "Why does Barack Obama always have to rely on teleprompters?" Many other such examples. Of course, Donald Trump, the guy in the glass house throwing stones, his teleprompter reportedly glitching. And suddenly Trump thinks there were airplanes and airports in the 1700s. Here's Donald Trump blaming the teleprompter.
Give a little appreciation. The media, generally speaking, loved it. They loved the evening. We had a lot of rain. I stood in the rain. The teleprompter went out. So I had... Yeah, the teleprompter went out. It kept going on. And then at the end, it just went out. It went kaput. So I could have said, and actually right in the middle of that sentence, it went out. And that's not a good feeling.
This guy's just the funniest, isn't he, despite himself, Trump? If it weren't so embarrassing internationally, day after day after day, he has no fun. For a guy with no sense of humor whatsoever, he is inadvertently funny in ways that he can't even understand. A president should not get so confused by a teleprompter going out that he starts saying there were airports in the 1700s, right? Is it too much to just expect some basic knowledge? If, quote, the prompter went out and Trump mentioned that the Civil War was ultimately decided by who had the better internet technology, would we accept that and say, the teleprompter went out? Of course he said the internet technology at the time determined the winner of the Civil War. No, we wouldn't accept it, and this is just as stupid.